Today I want to do a presentation basically focusing on sleep, or what happens to the body when we don't get enough sleep. I hope to give you enough information so that you can make a judgment on whether it is important for your life. Is it important? Do we need it? Well, most of us would say to some extent we do, but there are those of us that might look at sleep as the break between what we do during the day or when we're actually awake. It's that part that we have to lie down, we have to shut our eyes, at least for a little bit, but the rest of our day is way more important. We have to get stuff done. Who are some of the people that are affected by poor sleep? Well, many of Americans are, but shift workers in particular, nurses, firemen, police officers, to name a few. These people are on oftentimes dog watch shifts, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and then they come home and they can't go to sleep. They have to take care of the kids. They have to do a different job. They're running around doing lots of other stuff. So these people get affected by their patterns of work for the amount of sleep they can get. Other things that have affected sleep over the course of time has been our bodies. America has been gaining weight over the last 50 to 60 years at an alarming rate. And the amount of obesity in America has affected things like sleep apnea. Sleep apnea, whether neurological or obstructive in nature, is where we stop breathing for at least moments at night. Oftentimes, we startle ourselves and wake up. People with sleep apnea may use a CPAP machine, and these machines actually use masks that in the middle of the night are forcing air into the lungs of the person with sleep apnea. It causes them to breathe and doesn't allow them to not have an apnea incident. It allows them to continue to breathe. Now, other people that are affected by this are people struggling with the American dream. That could be just about anybody. The American dream of owning a house, a car, sending your kids to school, all these different things compared to how much money we make is a huge factor nowadays. How many people are working 2 jobs? I know myself, I'm going to school at night while working full time. And I have a part-time job a little bit on the side on the weekends. So right there, I'm a perfect candidate for trying to better my life, but my sleep is pulled back. So we say that the American dream versus inflation is affecting our sleep pattern. We are working harder and having to encroach on our sleep numbers. Believe it or not, modern lighting and modern distractions have also affected sleep. Since candles went the way of the dodo and the electric light bulb came into play, we actually sleep less because we have the modern convenience of flipping a switch. Add into that iPhones, Xbox, computers, TV, bad TV programming, and we're up all night. Many of us don't go to bed till after the late show. So now we're up for long past what people used to go to bed in the 1700s. When the sun went down, you had a limited amount of candlelight and you went to bed. So what does all this mean? These are just examples of why we may not be sleeping, but it's not actually the research on sleep. Let's look at the research so that we can kind of evaluate what's happening. Well, a 2005 Sleep Foundation poll did an analysis of our sleep. It turns out that we sleep about 6.9 hours per night as average for the Americans. That represents a drop of 2 hours since the 19th century. 1 hour in the last 50 years, and believe it or not, 25 minutes since 2001. Does it affect us? Sure it does. I read a news article in Newsweek, 2010 June edition. It was written by Lawrence Epstein. It was a great article. It was titled "The Surprising Toll of Sleep Deprivation." A great article based on this study that I'm quoting you. A University of Pennsylvania study restricted volunteers to less than 6 hours in bed for 1 week. Now think about that. Just 6 hours? That's actually not so bad. Many of us sleep 4 or 5, those of us who have double jobs and taking care of the kids and all that sort of stuff. And the average American is 6.9 hours. Okay, so they restricted volunteers to 6 hours for 1 week. When they tested the people, they tested as if they had the cognitive abilities, meaning the thinking capacity, and the reaction times as if they'd been awake continuously for 48 hours. That's a huge factor. Think about that. Most of the people you see that are sleeping less than 6 hours and saying, yeah, I get 5 hours of sleep per night, I'm fine. The actual study says that they have the reaction times as if they've been up awake for 48 hours. And these people are driving their kids around and behind a wheel of a car. It's crazy. Now, not only regular people are affected by sleep, but athletes as well. Several studies have looked at baseball, and baseball has basically shown that it is a huge sport affected by sleep. Vanderbilt University did a study that was written up in the Sleep Journal for 2003. They did the study in 2012, and it was a study validating a statistical model predicting possible fatigue effects in Major League Baseball. All right, what did they find? They found that the longer the season went on, the more poorly the batters were picking out good pitches from bad pitches, and they would swing at pitches outside of the strike box more often as the season went on. This is exactly the opposite that what you'd expect to see. If you do a task or behavior again and again and again over the course of the year, you're supposed to actually get better at that task, not worse. Yet, that's not what was happening. So the net result of the study, fatigue, the travel schedule, the relentless game schedule was having an impact on these baseball players doing their task that they do time and time again and being able to do it well. They were actually doing it more poorly as the season went on. That's not the only study with baseball. A really interesting study was concerning just a simple self-assessment concerning sleep. It's called the Epworth Sleep Scale, and it's a 1 to 15 test where you rate yourself about how well you sleep. If you test 15, you're not sleeping. You have the poorest sleep hygiene that is possible. If you test 0 or 1, you sleep phenomenally. What they found was if a baseball player self-tested himself at 11 or higher on the Epworth scale, he had a 75% chance in Major League Baseball of not being in the league in 3 years. And the lower the score went to being better tested, actually the lower the percentage for them leaving the league. If you were testing yourself at 1 to 3, you only had a 13% chance of being not in Major League Baseball. Think about that. And it was a direct correlation line right down the scale. The higher the number, the higher the percentage that you would be out. It was pretty crazy. Multiple studies are also showing that sleep can affect anybody, and most specifically athletes, with their heart rate. Well, what does that mean? Heart rate affects how well you can oxygenate your body. And you would say that an athlete that's running or doing high-intensity sport activity would want a higher heart rate. But there's normal high heart rate, and there's athletic, sleep, elevated heart rate. So if you don't sleep enough, you're actually going to have your heart rate beat even faster than the normal athletic heart rate. What does that do? It actually reduces your stroke volume. That means the amount of blood that is in each pulse of your heart. And so when that happens, an athlete can't thoroughly oxygenate their system. They actually get out of breath. They don't get more in shape, they get more out of shape just from lack of sleep. And believe it or not, studies are showing that that happens in 1 to 2 days of no sleep. So it's important even for athletes. So we've looked at